Well, good morning, Felicity Gaffney from the National Botanic Gardens. You're most welcome this morning, today, to talk to me, Deirdre McCafferty, for Cornucopia Climate Chats. And today we're talking about the wonderful space of the National Botanic Gardens in North Dublin, in Glasnevin, which have been there, I believe, 230 years, providing a space for Dubliners to see the beautiful trees and plants that are there. So, Felicity, you're most welcome. How long have you worked in the Botanic Gardens, and can you tell us about how you got there?
I'm like one of the old trees now. I'm here 29 years.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So it's amazing length of time. And I've seen a lot of change in that time, a lot of change, but it's a lovely place to work. As you say, we're 230 years since we were established in 1795 this year. So it's an amazing journey here, and the visitor centre and the education part, and where the tea rooms is, everybody knows that part very well. That's been open 25 years in September this year. So time is marching on. But it's a fantastic place. It's full of plants. It's full of people. It's full of people who come here regularly also, and they really appreciate the gardens. And there's a kind of a family feel to the visitors who come here. And it's people bring their toddlers, and the older people meet here, the elders. It is an extraordinary place. And then, of course, we have people of all age groups and all nationalities, from tourists to people who just live down the road. So it's well-used resource.
Thanks so much, Felicity. Funny, when I was preparing for the talk today, the song that kept coming into my mind was Joni Mitchell's Yellow Taxi. And they took all the trees and put them in the tree museum, and they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. And I was looking at the Botanic Gardens just on Google Maps, just to see how large a space it is. And it did strike me as being a haven away from paradise, which of course would be all of the planet, which has mostly been paved. And hopefully it's not a tree museum. But I do know that there's a lot of research done. And Chagas has a big school of agriculture, isn't that right, within the Botanic Gardens? Right. So can you tell us about what happens there?
The gardens itself is 19.5 hectares, which is roughly 50 acres. So that's really a nice green oasis in the heart of the city from a biodiversity point of view. And also next door, as you know, we have Glasnevin Cemetery. So as the bird flies, that's a garden cemetery in as much as it can be. Between ourselves and the cemetery, we really are contributing a green lung to the city, which, as we know, from a biodiversity point of view, from a conservation point of view, and just from the air we breathe point of view, that is wonderfully important. Also, as you said, we do have a third level college here at Chagas. We're on the horticultural college here, and our students are part of the fabric of the gardens here. They do the work experience on the grounds, and they work as gardeners in the summertime, and they become part of the Botanic Gardens family for a short while too. So it's quite interesting from that aspect. But the gardens itself, our main role, well, we have few roles. One of the main roles, of course, is plant conservation and preservation, and looking after rare and endangered species, but also looking after and conserving and researching into our native flora. Because each botanic gardens in the world has a role now on the Global Convention for Plant Diversity to preserve their own national flora. So we have a part of the garden is called Wild Ireland. Back in the old days, we used to call it the native section, but now it's called Wild Ireland. And we try to endeavour to have all of the species of the country in that area. And if they're not in that area, they're up backstage in the nursery. Because wild plants, what we call wild plants, weeds, lots of them don't like to be propagated in pots. They don't like to stay in pots. They go all over the place, or some of them might be growing in sand dunes, some of them could be growing in bogs. So to try and create habitats that are suitable for that native flora is very important. So sometimes you can't always see it out on the grounds, but we would have it, as I say, backstage.
That's great. And if you come to the Botanic Gardens and you wanted to learn about the native plants to Ireland, are there specific tours? I see that you have many, many tours from time to time organized. So is that something that you do, Felicity, is plan what the different tours will be? Because there's always so many interesting ones.
Yes. Well, actually, my role here is head of education. So I manage the events, the exhibitions, and the education programs, and the guide team. So the guide teams are the ones that make all the stuff happen, which is great. So I have it's nice for me. Every month we do a themed tour, and many times we might have something about the native plants or Ireland's wild plants or Ireland's wild orchids, or so you just check up on our website or Facebook or follow us on Instagram or Eventbrite. We usually put all our tours up on that, and they book out so quickly. It's a great tribute to the guides, and it's great. It really is fantastic. The moment, I think the one is sensational. It's all about the different scents that one can experience, and talks about pollination and the interaction between plants and animals. So, they're interesting. They're not awfully highbrow. They're not too highbrow, so they say, oh God, that's going to be hard. But it's just a way of engaging people with the gardens, with plants, and the importance of preserving our habitats and biodiversity.
I went on one which was on biophilia, Felicity, and yes. I was absolutely fascinated to see the link. I mean, we all know this, between positive psychology and being in green spaces, but the person giving the tour gave a lot of scientific information about research that's been done about how important it is for us to be in, as humans, and possibly as animals also, to be in green spaces. And it's just so tragic when people live in just concrete spaces without any greenery. It was really, really fascinating. So I thank you for your educational program. And I also went to a lecture that was given and was very inspired. So the education program is just really important. I just wanted to ask you about one particular plant I saw when you brought me on a tour, which was just really interesting because each tree and plant there seems to have its own history. And that was a handkerchief tree. Can you tell us a little bit about that handkerchief tree? I just thought it was so beautiful.
The handkerchief tree is one of the highlights of the visits in April and May. It just depends on, it used to be in April, it was May this year. Next year it could be the end of March, or it could be whatever. But anyway, it's a Chinese tree, and it's called Davidia involucrata, named after a priest, a French priest called Père Armand David. But it has an Irish connection because there was an Irish plant collector called Augustin Henry who actually brought back over 1,500 plants from China back in the 1800s. And he was constantly collecting plants and sending them back to here, to Kew Gardens, to Edinburgh. And that's what they used to do, to identify the plants and get them into the collections. And he might say, oh, I've seen this beautiful plant, you must come and collect it, and so on. So he saw the handkerchief tree, and I'd never heard of it, I'd never seen it. And it has most unusual, it's got lots of different names. It's got ghost tree, it's called the dove tree, and it's called the handkerchief tree because it's got two white, they're actually leaf bracts, but they look like flowers from the distance. And they just hang it up, so they're just a shimmering, beautiful white tree covered in white blossoms in the springtime or the early summer. And he thought this was just the most fantastic tree in the world, and it had to be collected and it had to be sent back. So a plant expedition was sent from Vetch's nursery in England with a plant collector called Ernest Wilson, who was a very famous plant collector. And his main job was told, don't come back without that handkerchief tree. We're going to introduce that to science, and we're going to be rich and happy and fantastic. And they were delighted. So he came, first visit was to Augustin Henry, who was an Irishman who was working in the customs at the time, but he used to plant collect on the weekends, and that was his hobby. And he told him where it was, but it took the guy 6 months on the back of a donkey to find the tree. And when he found the location of the tree, it had actually been chopped down and a house was built. It's a very modern day story for the late 1800s. But they were able to put him in the direction of another one, and he collected it and brought it back. But in the meantime, this French priest that I was telling you about, he had actually sent it to Paris, and they had already named it. Augustin Henry wanted it to be named for himself.
so beautiful. And when you're standing under it, and the handkerchiefs, because each blossom, it looks like a hanky, and
Yeah.
it's the size of a hanky, spread all over the grass, and you're standing there in the middle of May in the sunshine on this tree. It's like a magical experience. It was hard to actually describe how beautiful it was the day that I saw it. I guess I saw it in its full blossom, and the weather, the May sunshine comes to.
Those old-fashioned days of good weather last week or the week before.
I'm very lucky. Now, there's a huge connection between botanical gardens internationally, isn't that right? It's like a network. And as I'm interested in climate change and biodiversity, what we have here is a bit of a sort of like a brain. So we're working on lots of different levels to mitigate against climate change. But obviously, the science and research that's being done in each botanical gardens across the world, is there a sort of like a brain connection, like a neuron connection, sharing all this information? Or could that improve, in your opinion? You travel, I know, Felicity, sometimes to other botanical gardens in different places.
There's always been a relationship between botanic gardens across the world. And one of the reasons was for sharing plants initially, and, to try and grow plants. When botanic gardens, when they originally, in their innovation, they were kind of medicinal gardens, first of all, attached to universities, many of them were. And then they developed and developed. And as the Victorians became great plant hunters, it wasn't just they were collecting for crops in the colonies, but they were also collecting for, the Victorians loved ferns, they loved beautiful plants, they wanted to decorate their gardens and their houses and so on. So the kind of race was on to collect the best and the most wonderful plants. And of course, the old-fashioned way was they just went out into the wild, dug up the plants, took them home and had them. And as a result, we have some absolutely extinct plants in the wild sitting here in our glass houses that would have been collected many, many years ago. And we're actually playing a role in conservation for them now, because there was only ever, for example, there's one called the loneliest plant in the world. It's in the Guinness Book of Records. And it's a cycad, Encephalatus woodii. And that was found in KwaZulu-Natal outside Durban. And they dug it up and they brought it and they distributed bits of it to different botanic gardens around the world. At the time, there would have been, one would have gone to Edinburgh, one would have gone to Kew. And we were run by the British government at the time, don't forget. So one came here, they owned us here in the Botanic Gardens too. We were Royal Botanic Gardens at the time. So we got plants that way too. And it was basically the idea of sharing it around is that the plants wouldn't get lost. So if one died, well, they'd be able to call Dublin or write to Dublin, not call Dublin in those days. So that's basically how all this stuff all evolved. And that's sort of old-fashioned conservation. As a result of that, and it wasn't that honourable a pastime when we look at it in hindsight, because, the plant collectors would have stolen, basically, plants, medicines, all those things from indigenous people. Now there are rules against all of that, which is great.
Okay.
And the Botanic Gardens have strategies and they work together to stop. And the Convention on Biological Diversity, prevents people from just going in and taking things from people. But there are so many plants still not discovered, still not described in science.
Really? There are many. I know that they talk about it in the Amazon jungle. There are more there than what we know of. So do you still think that there are plants to be discovered and medicinal plants to be discovered, Felicity?
I would, because really plants are very interesting, because plants can kill you, can poison you, and can cure you, I suppose, just to put it on a very simple level. And for example, if you take our own yew tree, Taxus baccata, every part of that tree is poisonous except a tiny little red arrow, which is like the little red berry you'd see in the autumn time on it. But that encases a seed, which is deadly poison. Okay, so it's all poison and people don't eat it, and cows are, we have fatalities if the cows eat it and so on. But in that, there is a substance called Taxol, and that has been identified as the treatment for breast cancer.
Wow.
For many years now, yes. And at one stage, they were cutting down the yew tree clippings, particularly in the UK, because yew was very slow growing, but they would go around gardens and collecting clippings and making the medicine from it. Now, since then, they've learned, or they isolated whatever compounds were in it, and they make an artificial drug. which reflects what is in the plant. So there's a lot of cures in plants that we don't know about. As we found with COVID, diseases evolve, and sometimes a disease hasn't evolved yet, the cure hasn't been developed yet, but the cure could be in a plant that we haven't even discovered yet. It's an interesting principle, you know.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting from the history of the Botanic Gardens that what caused the blight on the potatoes, creating the potato famine, killing the potatoes, which were the only source of food for most of the population at the time. It was first identified in the Botanic Gardens. So it would be interesting to see if the Botanic Gardens could have a role in disease prevention. Do you know much about what happened back then with the blight?
Well, it was identified first in 1845 in August. I think it was the 20th of August, 1845. They saw there was something on the potatoes, but it wasn't actually described until the following year. There was Phytophthora. And once they knew that it was Phytophthora, and that was discovered here, exactly, and described here. Moore was the director at the time, and he was conversing with other botanic gardens. And they had seen it in Belgium, I think it was, and another country, and Scotland. So they were trying, to figure it out. And when he saw it the next year, he knew it was Phytophthora, and from that, then they were able to develop and work on it.
They weren't able to prevent it. Yeah. Terrible. So you've got.
And actually, we're going to be doing a talk on that in August of this year.
Oh, really?
So there will be. It's probably a guided walk around about the famine and what happened around that time, around the lumper potato, and obviously how they discovered it and so on. So one of our team now is researching madly into that at the moment as we speak, even.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And is it fun, Felicity, coming up with different ideas for your education program? Just occurs to me, are you always sort of one ear listening to what might be interesting, what's happening, what people are interested in?
It is very interesting, and we try to be relevant. A lot of work we do is on biodiversity and biodiversity preservation, which broadens the scheme. It's not just about plants anymore. It's about, well, plants can't exist unless they're living in a biodiverse universe, one way or the other. So it's about habitat, it's about everything. So it is fun, and we do make up different things to try and develop people's interest and explain the role, the importance of plants in our lives. And there's so many different facets. Yeah, it is great. We work through art as well. We've done lots of different exhibitions, and we're working on programs fusing art and science. And that is very interesting. And we'd have exhibitions reflecting that, workshops. We had teachers' conferences and teachers' courses, and partnered in Erasmus with Iceland and Lithuania to develop this program, which was essentially for teachers, but we kind of rolled it out to anybody who was interested as well. And there were international workshops that were a week long in each country, working with artists and scientists, explaining the importance and how you would work and develop programs around biodiversity, water and soil. So that was a lovely thing. And I'm actually going to Korea next week as part of a panel discussion on the International Botanic Gardens Education Congress. And we'll be presenting a panel there on fusing art and science at that. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Sometimes just dealing with things intellectually can be a little bit off-putting, but when you appeal to somebody's heart, it just makes it all much more real. And, yes, in the climate change space, appealing to people. So the connection between art and science is something, yes, I would really support. The sculpture in art that is in the Botanic Gardens every year is really, or most years, is unmissable. It's so nice. Artists always preparing their sculptures and hoping that they get chosen.
Sculpture in Context, yes. They're having their 40th exhibition this year, their 25th here, and their 40th in total. And they're a group of artists, basically, who came together who wanted to promote sculpture in unique and sympathetic spaces, I guess. And they went to many different places first, but when they came to the Botanic Gardens, this really became their home. And we have sculptures both in the gallery space, smaller ones, and then outside we have sculptures there. And the idea is that the sculptures will be in context with nature, with the gardens, with conservation, with horticulture. So there has to be a relevance for them. And I think over 400 people submitted this year. So that's a lot. And then there's an independent panel every year who go through and select the pieces. And I'd say only 1 in 4 probably artists will get through this year. It's a big thing. It's on every year in September going into October. So yeah, so don't miss it this year now.
You have a theme every year that artists work towards, or is it just nature?
It's those themes that I mentioned. It could be anything. It's supposed to be sculpture in the context of the Botanic Gardens. But you can broaden that out, and they do broaden it out considerably.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, and Felicity, as we come to the end of our conversation, can you tell me any films or books or anything like that that you think might inspire people to come to the Botanic Gardens or to be more in nature, to be inspired, I think is what
Well,
helps.
David Attenborough, we all know David Attenborough and his programs on the TV, and they provide books as well. He did, I've forgotten the name of the show now, but he did 4 episodes in Kew Gardens a number of years ago, and that was really inspiring because although we have glass houses, so do they. So a lot of our collections are similar. Now, Kew is bigger than us, but we're one of the top 10 botanic gardens in the world. So that's nice. People for Plants is another book, and it's all about the uses of plants and, you know, what we use plants for, which is fascinating. There's just so many things. Anna Lewington, I think, wrote that book. That's a very good book. And just anything about nature. Anything about plants that you can lay your hand on. There's so many books out there now.
And do you like gardening yourself?
I do like gardening. I just don't have enough time to get it on top of it, but I do love it. I have a big garden and I like to spend hours and hours in it. It's my downtime.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much, Felicity. It was really lovely talking to you. I encourage
Thank you for having me.
Botanic Gardens. There's one also in Wicklow, isn't there? There's a Botanic Gardens in Wicklow, Kilmacurra.
Yes, we have the National Botanic Gardens Kilmacurra. It's on the number 18 on the motorway and the road to Wexford, and it is just a pleasure to go there. It is a fantastic place, and if you haven't been there, you have to go. And there's a lovely coffee shop, and you can bring picnics and your dog on a lead there. Can't bring dogs here.
Yeah, it's a bit wilder. I have been down there. Yeah. So thank you very much, Felicity.
And you're very welcome.
Here's to being out in nature, spending time in the beautiful Botanic Gardens and its beautiful buildings and architecture, as well as its plants. Thanks very much, Felicity. And
thanks, Deirdre.
We'll again soon. See you in the Botanic.